Hey, good morning, everybody. This is JP. Hope everybody's doing great out there in the partner community. Just wanted to make sure that we are all here for the right webinar. This is how do you rebound from a ransomware attack? And what I thought I'd do this morning prior to getting going is just elaborate a little bit on how we came up with the topic, how it came to be, and then ultimately we'll get going. So a couple months back, Green Cloud was in Dallas for the IT Nation Evolve meetings, and Arlen Sorensen, who leads that community, asked me and a couple of our vendor peers to get together in a room and obviously discuss the hot topic of ransomware, because let's face it, it's everywhere and it's growing. It's not going away in the unforeseeable future. And he said, look, all of us have a responsibility to the partners. And I thought he was spot on. He said, we have a responsibility to the partners to make sure they're educated on how our products can help during a ransomware attack. And it's not to say that all products out there on the market are the same, not any one of them. And through this conversation, you'll hear us say that none of them have any silver bullets to them, but there are ways that you can kind of collaborate with several vendors to come up with a solution that makes a lot of sense to help in the rebounding from any event. So that's how we came up with it. So before we get going, I will say that just from a who's here and housekeeping items, we'll go over that first. So you heard from John McBride prior to me jumping on. John McBride is our VP of Product Development here at Green Cloud. He runs all the products and services through his team, and many of you interface with he and his counterparts on a day-to-day basis for sales engineering, product enhancements, developments, etc. And then myself, obviously, a lot of you all know me, work with the sales organization here, sales development, account execs, channel managers whom you all interface with, etc. So, John, will you walk us through a couple housekeeping items?
Yeah. Yes. So wanted to talk about questions. As we go through, use the question tab at the bottom, fill in your question. We'll be compiling those and addressing those at the very end. Everybody will be muted so there's no interruptions while we're going through the presentation. As always, we'd like to offer the folks that are attending and staying on for the full length of the webinar a discount on new managed services for 2019. And then we also would like to, as a token of appreciation, offer an Amazon gift card in the value of $15. Make sure that you stay on for the entirety and we'll take care of you. And then there are the folks that have joined as call-in attendees. Katie Walling email address will be at the end of the presentation. We'll put that up. If you just send her an email, we want to make sure that you guys get credit as well and can offer that discount as well as the Amazon gift card to you guys too. One last thing before we get started, JP, I apologize. For the folks that need to distribute this content to the folks that aren't able to make it, we will be offering a recording. At the end, Katie will send that out to everyone. So if folks aren't able to make it, but you'd like to pass that on, we'll have that recording for you.
Good deal. Thanks, John. So let's get started. So the question in hand is, how do you rebound from an attack? And before we really jump into the nuts and bolts, let's just take a step back and let's define what an actual attack is, right? So if you haven't been under a rock lately, we all clearly know that a ransomware attack is an attack from from a malicious type of software designed to block access to a computer system until, of course, you pay a sum of money. And by the way, the question that we get asked, and I was with a couple partners over the last couple of days, and they asked me point blank, they said, look, there's got to be a silver bullet out there to help protect from these things. You know, the feedback that the partner community is getting from several clients is, I've only been hit with ransomware once this year, and that's pretty good. And I kept telling them, the short answer, I guess, is yes, there are some silver bullets. I don't think anybody would like the answers that I will give, but the real answer is no. So the only silver bullet that I can come up with is for anybody and everybody to completely unplug for you and your organization from the internet. And that's probably a little over the top, needless to say, especially for this day and age of 2019 and how we conduct business. So the other shorter answer to yes would be no, right? And there are no silver bullets. And I know in the partner community, a lot of times people don't like hearing no, but at the end of the day, I think we need to be honest with ourselves. If we're going to survive in 2019, you have to be on the internet. There's just no bones about it. I don't know of too many trades that don't use it. So if we're going to continue to rely on it, we have to come up with solutions to kind of bob and weave through it, if you will, and in some cases help us rebound from bad things. And in this day and age, there's not a whole lot of sure things. I mean, there's still death and taxes, as my dad once told me, that's still around, but silver bullets, not so much. So the question becomes, how do we rebound? And the reality is that we or someone we know will likely experience an attack at some point. And we all know that more data protection is key, and it's better, especially in assisting with solving this dilemma, and it's a heck of a lot better than turning either off the internet or turning a blind eye to the actual issue at hand. And if you think about the analogy of a castle in your business, right? If you think about your business as a castle, first, I mean, if I had a castle, I'd protect it with a gate. I'd probably have a moat out there, and then a proactive team that would serve as my army. And that army would help defend against the threats that probably are going to be impactful to my business. Now, many of us and our end users will align our organizations with antivirus software, malware software, next generation firewalls that are either managed by a security firm or someone that we know. And then, of course, all the other ingredients that are needed to be a part of our security recipe. And yet, still bad things can happen to us. So back to the question at hand, from a rebound perspective, how do we do it? How do we recover? And if any of our organizations were hit with ransomware, where do we even start is the deeper question. And how do we get back to business every day? And then how do we get back to life as normal? And, in the news, we all hear stories from the various attacks that are happening through these APT groups that are holding cities and companies and various entities hostage. And quite frankly, they're requesting tens of thousands, if not tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. And by the way, APT, if you remember from one of our last webinars, that's defined as Advanced Persistent Threat Organizations that are either nation states or criminal organizations. And these groups are, quite frankly, motivated by money or politics or both. And yes, by the way, they do accept cash, they accept Bitcoin. And if you talk to them, they'd probably accept a whole host of other things. However, if we go into the heart of the discussion and our businesses from the mindset that failure isn't an option, and people, quite frankly, they don't plan to fail at network security. They fail to properly plan for network security and the things that probably could happen. So my advice is start with a plan. Have the right tools in place, have the right teams in place. So when it happens, not necessarily if it's going to happen, we know how to respond and rebound. And given enough time and money and resources, a breach is going to happen. So we have to be right 100% of the time. Whereas the bad actors, if you think about this, they only have to be right once. All they have to do is breach and compromise you one time. So I don't know if anybody saw it, but a few weeks ago, my friends at Infogressive, which is a dynamic security organization that Green Cloud is partnered with, they posted a video online articulating that a cyber or ransomware attack is no different than a crime scene. And we should treat the attack as such. And, if you think about that analogy, that's perfect. Because if you think about a crime scene, the first people on the scene are the police, the CSI folks, the first responders. And ask yourself what they do. They isolate the scene, right? They don't allow people to come in. They start and they begin their forensics reviews. They call on the professionals to what I am going to call to assist with ground zero. And you should treat your organization and what has been impacted as the exact same. So I'm going to encourage you to reach out to a team of professionals that you have hopefully proactively aligned yourself with as your managed security provider and your managed services provider as well. You need to call your legal team. You need to reach out to whoever you've contracted with from a cyber risk insurance perspective. But do not respond to the attackers and do not go into the quote unquote crime scene, if you will. So the question that I get asked a lot is, how does cloud technology prevent the attacks? Well, the answer is really pretty easy. cloud technology does not prevent any attacks. There are certain ways that you can leverage cloud technology to help your company get back on your feet, though. So I'm going to go over two different examples of how cloud technologies could assist a company by rebounding. And these are very textbook clients. The first I'm going to call as the on-premise example. And the on-premise example is what I'm going to refer to as somebody that has all of their infrastructure completely on site. So picture the company that has all firewalls, all servers, potentially all computers, all desktops, all at their geographic physical location. And the second example is someone that has adopted all cloud technologies to support their businesses, meaning all their server infrastructure, their backups, their disaster recovery plan potentially is all in the cloud. So for starters, let's talk through the on-premise example, and I'll talk through how cloud technologies could help with rebounding from an event. And then I'll dive into the person that is all cloud. So for the companies that have all their infrastructure on site, we would advocate partnering with a cyber insurance provider, first off, to tailor your risk policy and tailor that according to your needs. Secondly, work with your IT partner to create a backup strategy. Now, this backup strategy should first back your data up locally and then leverage cloud computing, to get your backups offsite to a minimum of at least one cloud repository. This creates a solid backup environment. And ultimately, in a perfect world, if you can keep your data in 3 places, that's optimal. Many cloud providers can replicate the backups between multiple data centers. Bottom line, keep a local copy and then offsite 2 copy jobs. Therefore, by the way, there are multiple benefits of leveraging your cloud provider for this. First, to get your data offsite. And if you think about it, offsiting your data does one other thing additionally from a security perspective. And I know this is the slant for ransomware, but it also protects your data from being stolen. And I know it's taking it to the extreme, but at the end of the day, if someone were to break in your office and steal all the computers and servers and things that look like computer equipment, I'll call them, a lot of times they're going to take your backup appliances as well. So get your data offsite. Secondly, it allows for you to define your retention policies. For example, if you experienced a cyber attack this morning, but it impacted your data from last week, you could set a retention policy that allows you to go back as long as you want. Now, you may lose some of your data, but you're not going to lose all of it. And if you had to recover from these backups, you could. And keep in mind, it will take some time to recover from your backups, and it'll also take some time to rebuild through the process, but it can be done. But you can also leverage cloud technology and cloud providers like GreenCloud to create a faster time frame to restore. So work with companies like GreenCloud or your cloud provider to incorporate disaster recovery or business continuity plan that allows you to restore your environment potentially within hours. This allows you to get back to business, get back to normal, while your managed services and security partner, they investigate the event that happened. So while working with your IT services partner and to create your backup and disaster recovery plan, I would also encourage you to work on an incident response plan. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to develop a team to respond in the event of an attack to the event. And this should be a team that will define, analyze, and prepare for the unforeseen. Now, once that team is built, they should outline any of the response requirements and define the resolution times that are suitable for your businesses. Develop a strategy for the event and then work with a group of security experts to assist you and help you walk through that process. They will help and walk you through, you and your team, through fire drills, and they will also set up a scheduling for testing purposes. Lastly, this team of internal folks for your organizations should be fully prepared to conduct a plan and then ultimately debrief for a final review. Now, many people come to us and they ask us, okay, if I'm going to develop this response team, who should be on it within my organization? So obviously, if you're the owner of an organization, I'd probably advocate that you have the owner involved, right? A controller, someone that's over finances, an IT person. If you have one local to your organization, definitely advocate that. If you use an external IT managed services firm, definitely have them engaged. And then I'd also incorporate and encourage you guys to have local phone numbers for your insurance provider, potentially local FBI agents as well, all of which is critical and key during an event. And during an event, by the way, or an attack, as I guess I'll call it, your outsourced security firm, they should be able to help you quickly prepare for the unforeseen, identify not only the event, but the root cause, but they should contain the issue, eradicate that issue, and then help recover from it. And then after the fact, and you're back on your feet, obviously they will help you also debrief and go through what has occurred. Now, for scenario two, or for those that are of you all who are looking at the webinar, for those that are the early cloud adopters, right, that run their day-to-day operations all in the cloud, the same principles apply. We would advocate both keeping image-based snapshots of the environment at the same local level, and local being defined as wherever your production servers are. Keep a local copy of at least your SAN snapshots there, and potentially send them to an alternate facility. In a perfect world, work with your cloud provider to ensure that you have more than 1 day of snapshot imaging. These are actually images of your servers. And then take the opportunity to enhance what you've already done, and then layer on file-based backups to extend those retention policies. This will allow, obviously you to go back further in time and obviously restore any files necessary before the event actually took place to help recreate your environment. And then obviously keep building on this. Leverage multiple data centers to create a fully redundant business continuity solution, or DR plan, as some of you may call it. This creates an environment that when it all hits the fan in your production facility, you're restored to a certain point in time in a completely geo-redundant facility. Now, when thinking through various options, providers like Green Cloud will allow you to replicate between data centers. This can be done at the file-based level, the SAN snapshot level, or the entire machine on a very consistent basis. And the idea here is to work with you and your managed services firm to come up with a plan that helps you not just achieve your goals, but your restoral times and points that, once again, is suitable for your organization. Now, for this client, the same incident response team should also be in place, right? They should be working closely with your security firm to prepare and defend from those attackers. Make sure that you have a backup strategy, a DR strategy, and an incident response plan, so you're on the offensive versus being on the defensive if you have to declare a disaster, if you will. Regardless, in both examples, whether you're on premise or you're an early cloud adopter and you have all your infrastructure that, offsite, usually here's what makes the decision and the deciding factor: where your risk tolerance and your budget meet, where those two things collide. That's usually where your backup, your disaster recovery, business continuity, and your security initiative policies are. That's how you develop them. So I'll take a little bit of time prior to questions to go back to the beginning and recap a very critical point that I mentioned. All of us in our respective industries are deemed as experts. At least that's what our clients look at us for, right? And so, at the end of the day, I would encourage you, just as your clients are looking to you for some advice, I would advocate to do the same for yourself. Align yourself with organizations with a team of experts who can help you navigate through the unfortunate dark world of ransomware. If you become a target, lean on your partner and the incident response plan that you've set in place, and lean on the organizations that you've hired to help you get back to normal by leveraging security and off-premise technologies to help you rebound in the event of an unfortunate event. So with that said, I'm going to quit talking and we're going to go through some questions that have come through via the chat. And John is going to take those questions, and we will either let him answer them or we will jointly answer those.
So first question here, it looks like for using multiple data centers, what are the best practices for choosing which locations to use? Obviously, when choosing a different data center, you want to probably come in to look at what exactly you're trying to accomplish, right? We generally find a lot of folks that will align themselves with the data center that's fairly close to their corporate headquarters or facilities, something that they can go to physically, but then also get some type of geo redundancy as well. I have another question here about how often should a business perform a pen test? We find that a lot of our clients are driven due to compliance within the industry that they are. And a lot of them have a yearly requirement for a pen test. One of the things that we've seen of great use, as just while we're talking about that, is a risk assessment analysis as well. It's sort of a pre-pen test instead of the official document. It prepares them for the actual pen test that they have to then turn into whichever compliance organization that they're working with. Sort of gives them a pre-test to help them correct anything that they may fail, so that when they do have a pen test that they can successfully get through that. Obviously, it's not a bad thing to test your environment, especially if you have the certain type of clients and the risks that would cause you to need to address that. So we have some folks that are doing it, every 6 months, but for the most part, most people are getting them yearly. Got a question specifically about Green Cloud's data centers. Are there any of your data centers equipped with more compliance or security? So we have 6 data centers throughout the country that all follow the same guidelines, policies, and procedures as part of our SOC 2 Type 2 that we work toward. So I guess simply that would be they're all equipped the same. And I think JP touched on this a little bit about employee training. How often should you perform employee training? So one of the things that we like to stress with employee training is that you should really get a baseline, see where your security posture is, and then set up a program that gets everyone training at least yearly. And then obviously you have some folks that are in more high profile positions that have access to more critical systems, and they may need to put through more rigorous employee testing. But obviously baselining the testing and then ensuring that your folks are updated regularly, yearly or biannually. And then obviously for new employees to make sure that they're not the weak link coming in, that they get a full suite of training as well is very important. I got a question here about, do you recommend dual authentication for all users? Definitely in this day and age with different methods of access, we do recommend that I think adds that extra layer of security and extra hoop that then is an additional point of security that the bad actors are going to have to get past. So by adding that, I definitely think that's a wise thing. For those of us who are hosting banking solutions in your data centers, are you providing any level of SIM oversight for those systems? So we have an option for a managed SIM that can be added on to any of our products with that included. Is the Castle example, what are the tools MSPs should have at a minimum? So that's a great question. We like to think about it as sort of a wheel. JP touched on a couple of those items, and I'll fill in sort of the rest as we look at the layered approach. Definitely looking at some type of perimeter security. Firewalls of old are simply being bypassed now. So a unified threat management solution is very key. Most of the attacks come through email, so we would recommend some type of email security. Looking at your environment to see where the vulnerabilities are. That's where the vulnerabilities, network vulnerability scanning, and overall vulnerability management solution would be in place. Looking at encryption and malware prevention. JP touched on that, so some type of endpoint security. And then a detection and response type platform, which would be something like logs and SIM analysis, as well as endpoint detection and response to actively reduce the dwell time that the bad actors are in your network. And then also to complement all those things is a full suite of professional services to help bring in experts to help augment your staff. So we have another question here about, does expanding the journaling space for Zerto DRAS improve the recovery process? Any recommendations? Yeah, it's sort of a balancing, obviously, on how much space you're going to be using it and how much protection. I think JP's point was well taken. Obviously, you want to have a disaster recovery plan, but I think a full suite is going to include backups as well. So backups is going to be for your longer term retention items there, but then also have the portions that's answering the questions for the DRAS. I think is very important. Um, Could you mention some daily KPIs to check? Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think when we talk about logging and things like that, those are things that you're going to want to have actively monitored. And one of the things that we've seen a lot of success with is really the endpoint detection and response to really see when the attack or breach has occurred and really shorten that time down. We have several folks that have come to us that have had a SIM service in place, and they've had longer reporting cycles. And the SIM is great for compliance reasons, but it's sort of that black box in the airplane. I've mentioned this before. The plane has already crashed. Now they're coming back and looking to see what actually caused that. Where an EDR solution is going to be something that's looking at behavioral analysis to see things that are out of the ordinary and reduce that amount of time. So there's been several times, as JP mentioned, that forensic team comes in. They've been able to actually mitigate and stop the actual bad actors from removing any data or actually causing any real damage, and to stop them in their tracks, if you will, because they were able to identify them in the network at the time. And a lot of these guys, they go and they set up within people's networks and they just sort of dwell. They like to lay out and map out all the financial systems within a company. They like to try to time it to where, like, the CEO is traveling because they have access to their calendars. They send out authentication, emails from that person to somebody in finance and say they need some money wired to this person or what have you. And they, make the statements from the CEO. So those people don't want to question them, and they generally do that. So these are all things that are orchestrated. But if you can reduce the amount of time that somebody's in the network, you can shut down a lot of these things because they won't have time to perpetrate those things.
Thanks, John. Also, had a couple folks text me as well. So we're using the chat function, and JP's texting. That's awesome. So I'm going to call you guys out. Tim Coach and Rex Benfield, two different partners in two different areas of the world, but they asked me a couple great questions, and that was, what lunch and learn topics around security have other partners, used, and kind of both of them asked, for best practices. The things that we've seen are, obviously you could utilize cybersecurity in a multitude of different lunch and learns for your clients. Obviously, the obvious are security and ransomware and tools to overcome those, right? I mean, that kind of is, features, advantages, and benefits. Take it a step farther. How do we position security within our client base so they can actually hear that we're giving them something in addition to what we're already providing for them? And then lastly, kind of what I've talked about here, rebounding from an attack. But what I would encourage everybody to do is do what I've seen with a lot of partners, and I'll be in Houston with another partner tomorrow doing a lunch and learn where an FBI person is coming in to speak on behalf of the cyber world and the security, the security breaches that are occurring, and how at a local level it's impactful, and how do we engage those local resources. So those are some things that I've seen. But if there's any additional questions, obviously keep them coming. And I don't think we have any as of right now, but this will be distributed after this. Once again, thanks for everybody's time.
Yep, and for all the call-in users that have been on the call the entire time, Katie's email is up on the screen now. It's Katie at gogreencloud.com. That's Katie at gogreencloud.com. Just email her and let her know that you attended the webinar, and she'll be sure to get you on the list for the Amazon gift card, as well as make sure you qualify for the discount for the managed security signed in 2019.